welcome back to another The Flying vlog. Today is Monday. Storm Gareth blew through yesterday, and today seems to be the remnants, as you can see by the windsock. 15 knot winds, probably gusting to about 28. So it looks like runway 28 today, crosswind takeoff. And we're flying the aircraft for its last flight on this engine before the engine change into Bournemouth Airport. So flight time today, 1 hour 14 minutes. I need to do a few things first, such as refuel the aircraft. I need to check the weather, make sure the winds are appropriate for today's flight. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another The Flying vlog. Sadly, this week I am not flying. However, that could change in the coming days as the weather improves. So what's happened is I've cancelled today's flight on the basis of the wind. Looking at the forecast yesterday, it was sort of a 50-50 chance, or moreover a 40% chance of flying and a 60% chance that I would cancel. I always think that it's good to go to the airport to see what the conditions are, to get in the habit of checking the aircraft out and actually checking the weather. I always think that once you're in a habit, it's quite good, because you're more likely to pick up on things, you're more likely to assess the situation more clearer. I don't know how most people will look at that situation and sort of go, am I talking the correct stuff? Because in my eyes and my opinion is that, when you're faced with a situation that you're not sure of, it's always best to consult instructors, examiners, fellow pilots, and actually, rather than just cancel the flight, look at the weather when you get to the airport and then decide and make a decision. So my decision was made literally 2 minutes before I was due to depart. And the reason why is because I obviously refueled the airplane as it had flown, and it was too windy for the Bowser to refuel the aircraft. So when I got to Stapleford this morning, I looked at the weather and it looked okay for departing Stapleford. It was gusty, but it wasn't out of the limits of the aircraft. It wasn't out of my personal limits, and it would have been on the touch of the bumpy side, having seen an aircraft fly over a beach barren this morning, and it looked pretty bumpy. But the issue is I looked at the weather at Bournemouth and it wasn't too bad, and it was forecast to be quite good. So having fueled the aircraft and done all the due diligence and checked the weather, I came across an amendment to the TAF for Bournemouth, and it was gust 35 till 6 p.m. However, there was a becoming between 10 and 1200 hours that the weather would improve. Having rung up the tower, they said it was highly unlikely to improve. I rung up Bournemouth handling to cancel, and they said that no one's flying today because of the weather, and that it just came out of nowhere. It didn't just come out of nowhere. I think it was kind of expected, but it wasn't expected to be that bad on the coast. Which is quite unusual, that the weather is worse in London than it is on the coast, but it now seems to be a bit more widespread. So it was kind of a good decision that I made to cancel, because as I cancelled, rather than the whole sod's law, you cancel, the weather improves, it pretty much didn't improve, and it stayed the same. So it was quite disappointing. Obviously wanted to fly the aircraft down to Bournemouth. There's previous videos which I'm showing you now on the screen that I've had quite fun flying to Bournemouth. I've had that really bumpy video, which I'm going to put to the top hand side of your screen so you can view that video, and it probably would have been a lot worse than that today. Although there was no cumulonimbus clouds today, it probably would have been on the same sort of turbulence wise, moderate to severe. It's just uncomfortable, especially when you're by yourself and you haven't got any passengers in the plane. When you have passengers in the plane, it's sort of it can be difficult, it can be better, because it is two sides to every tale, I think, when you have passengers in the plane. It depends on the passenger, but the way I see it is the passenger is weight, and the aircraft is less likely to be flown all over the place. It wasn't really a crosswind out of limits decision. It was more of a okay, gust 35 is over the CAA recommendation of 67% of your stall speed, which is quite interesting, because if you look at the Safety Sense leaflets, they're quite helpful in a way, because they sort of not push you above your limits, but they look at it on a reasonable scale, is that you can go flying in windy conditions, you can go flying, but you have to take these precautions. And what's in these books are written by the Civil Aviation Authority. And when you read them, you sort of understand it a bit more, and you calculate, and you do a bit of mathematics, and you sort of then go, okay, gust 34 is 67% of the stall limit for this aircraft, or 34.2 or whatever it sort of is. And it was obviously gust 35, so I was edging on the side of caution, simply because it's one knot over. I could have flown and the weather could have been fine as per the TAF, but based on my experiences and based on flights I've done in the past, is never trust the TAF. It's sort of a nowcast, and the nowcast sort of put me off, and I thought, what, it's probably best that I don't go ahead with today's flight, and either the aircraft is flown down later today when the wind's due to drop off. But as I'm obviously recording this video, the wind is still howling out there, and there's no forecast for improvement really, despite what the TAFs would say. It kind of brings me back to that point when I came back from France, having a TAF that there was a sense of get there-itis, yes, because of my passengers, and we've discussed that to lengths all across the internet and across YouTube and across the Facebook forums that there are available to us. And it then goes down to the sense that actually what I'm kind of saying is that you can't trust the TAF, because even if you do have to get there-itis, that will kill you. And it's making those decisions, those critical decisions as a single pilot. Am I comfortable? I was comfortable this morning up until about 2 minutes before my departure time at 9:45, and I looked at the TAF and I looked at the meta, and I just said to myself, I'm putting myself in a position where I'm going to be up in the air for 2 hours, 3 hours, trying to find a suitable place to land, and then obviously getting back to back to London, and obviously to work this evening. And there's no sense of getting there. I took the advice of the instructor to scrap the flight, and it's a good decision at the end of the day, because there are people flying, not from this airfield at the moment, but this aircraft that have been flying overhead, and you sit there and you look up and go, oh, okay, he's doing it, she's doing it, but you are your own person, you make these decisions. And I think this is a quite good video, because it sort of explains my single pilot decision making once again, and actually not going ahead with a flight rather than going ahead and pressing ahead, because it's just, for yourself, it's not comfortable, it's a lot of work, it's heavy workload, and it's probably best sometimes that you don't fly, and you make those decisions based on the weather that you have available to you and the forecast that you have available to you. That sort of sums it up. Kind of a long video, sort of to summarise why I've cancelled a flight, but I think it's quite important, because when you sort of know your current, which I am, and when you sort of decide what's best for you to get down to the airport that you want to go to, you then take into all the consideration all the factors, and if the factors, for me, there are too many variables, so to speak, that means there's a high risk of failure and there's a high risk of the flight not happening. I sort of then decide, actually, it's probably best I scrap the flight and I stay on the ground rather than wish I was on the ground when I'm up in the air. And I think every one of us have been in that situation before. Every one of us as pilots, single pilots that don't have commercial experience. Some of us that have instrument rating, some of us have instrument rating restricted, and have flown in all variable conditions. I mean, I've flown in IMC, I've flown in cumulonimbus or near cumulonimbus clouds and thunderstorms over my years, and especially during my training. Some of which is not on video, sadly, and some of which is. But all in all, I mean, it's kind of the expectation that you know what you're doing. I mean, I've got 200 hours now, and I kind of consider myself as an experienced PPL, or vanilla PPL, should I say. So I'm kind of experienced for a basic PPL license. When it comes to instrument rating and instrument rating restricted, I don't consider myself the perfect pilot yet. And obviously, those are the sort of things you want to work on, and better yourself as a pilot. But anyway, I think that's sort of enough on that point. I'm going to go and get myself some breakfast now, because it's 11 o'clock at the end of the day, and I've been at the airport for over 3 hours trying to refuel the aircraft, check the aircraft out, fit the cameras. But sadly, I think that it was a good decision. and ultimately a good decision rather than sadly. But sadly, you know, I don't get to take the aircraft to Bournemouth, which is always good experience flying to busy international airports. But hopefully, you know, in the next week or two, I get to fly the aircraft to the airport or from the airport. But looking at the forecast for the next few days, it doesn't look that great, really. I mean, today was probably the best opportunity to get the aircraft down there. The original plan was tomorrow, but if you've looked at the weather forecast for tomorrow, it's not that great. So, you know, you kind of have these decisions where you want to decide, do you take the aircraft, do you not take the aircraft up in the air? And I think ultimately this is the decision. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and you've sort of had a good look at the weather for today's date. So it's obviously Monday the 11th of March. You can look at the METARs, the TAFs, which I'll include, you know, the last 3 hours inside the channel description below. However, you know, obviously look back on the weather yourself and see what you would have done better or what you would have decided. But don't forget to subscribe. If you like the video, don't forget to also hit that like button. There's also the notification bell, so you get obviously direct notifications that you subscribe to my videos, and you'll pick up those videos a lot quicker than, you know, if you just subscribe. If you do love the videos, please do comment and let me know what you think. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Do you think about me?